the late 90s, Nintendo was kicked from their throne. They were previously the leader of the video game industry of both previous console generations, both in the console and handheld markets. But console-wise, they had now been toppled by Sony and their PlayStation. The PlayStation simply offered a better deal with their game selection and prices for both gamers and developers. They were the top dog now, while Nintendo struggled to just play second fiddle with their newest console. Meanwhile, on the handheld side of things, the Game Boy was showing its age. It was almost 10 years old, and Nintendo was making revamps and new models to keep it in the public's eye, but when your console games are full 3D, and this thing is still weaker than an NES, it was quickly becoming outdated. While this was happening, a company known as Game Freak and a man named Satoshi Tajiri had pitched a concept of capturing monsters to them based on his childhood hobby of collecting bugs. After being put on hiatus for a few years, Nintendo just finally went, you know what? Fuck it! Why not? And then created and released the games to the world. What happened next, nobody was expecting. The series we all know today as Pokemon became a worldwide phenomenon. The game sold millions upon millions of units, and kids were eating it up like candy. This was not a sleeper hit. Pokemon became engraved in society around that time. Every store, every outlet, and every street corner was filled with Pokemon merchandise. You could not escape it. The Game Boy, this literal brick of a handheld, had been given new life, and now its sales were through the roof, all due to the success of Pokemon. This thing was outdated and almost 10 years old at this point, and it was now in the hands of every kid playing Pokemon. Yeah, Nintendo wasn't the king anymore, and the N64 wasn't selling as good as their competitors, but that didn't matter because now they are making more money than all of them! This, of course, was going to breed some jealousy. Spending all the time and money to make these advanced 3D games when Nintendo is over here working with toothpicks and glue and making bank. This, of course, got other companies looking their way, and they wanted in on it. If they couldn't have that Pokemon money, then they were just gonna make their own.
With blackjack and hookers!
In 1999 and into the year 2000 and beyond, that's when the copycats started pouring out. From tons of big-name companies, Konami, Square Enix, Atlus, and others, they all made their own little monster capturing games to tap into that market. But since most of them weren't actually Pokemon, the vast majority of them did not take off and thus were lost to the sands of time, with an exception here and there. These little monster capturing games are quite interesting in their own ways, so why don't we look at a couple of them, mostly the obscure ones, because everyone likes to learn about something new. This event was the Pokemon clone catastrophe of Y2K.
3, 2, 1, happy 2.
Now, there were a ton of companies trying to catch that monster-catching wave back then, and a lot of them I sadly cannot play, because a good chunk of them were only released in Japan, and I don't have my Rosetta Stone on hand to translate these runes from the moon. And it's sad because there were some really interesting games I wanted to try. Did you know Sanrio and fucking Hello Kitty had a Pokemon clone back in the day? Did you? Well, you do now! So it seems I'm stuck to Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games that have English versions available, whether officially or not. The stranger or more obscure, the better. So why don't we start off with a licensed game?
Imagine sharing a secret with your closest friends that can be told to no one else. A secret that, if kept, could help save the world.
Animorphs was a popular book series in the late 90s. It was about aliens and kids that could turn into animals, and that's all I got. I'm sorry, I never read any of the books or watched the TV show. Blasphemous, I know, but look, I was still a toddler when this was popular. I'm sorry. The important thing here is, someone looked at this series and decided to make a game based off of it, and the first thing they thought was, Pokemon! From our pals at Ubisoft, here's Animorphs for the Game Boy Color. Aliens invade the Earth and your characters transform into animals to take them on. Now, you can sort of see how they could turn this into a Pokemon clone, collecting all the different animals and crap to take them on, and the game does sort of attempt that, albeit in a very half-assed way. The game is split up into 4 different missions. Each one has you play as a different character to stop whatever plots the aliens are attempting. This can range from taking down satellites in a zoo to transforming into animals from the circus. This game basically has you running around town doing missions while gathering animal transformations to help you do it. You can turn into a snake to enter cracks or a bat to fly in the dark, that kind of stuff. Seems like it has some variety, but in reality, this game is incredibly bare bones. Yeah, the combat system is just flat out Pokemon down to a T. It even says shit like it's super effective, lifted straight from Pokemon. But it's an extremely stripped back version to its most basic elements. There is no strategy in these fights. The best way to win in every fight is to pick your strongest move and spam it until either you or the enemy drops dead first. There's no battle animations, no movement, or anything. There's not even any sound effects. And I mean, there are no sound effects, period. This game has no sound effects for anything. It just makes it come off as cheap and unfinished. The only stimulation you get for your ears is the music, and the music isn't even that good. Everything is just a scaled-back, watered-down Pokemon. There are no RPG elements, no experience to gain, and no rock-paper-scissors concept with the elements being stronger than others. There's none of that. The gameplay loop basically boils down to you fighting an animal to get its transformation, to go fight a bigger animal to gain its transformation, to go fight a bigger animal to get its transformation, to fight the aliens. And that's when the biggest flaw of this game finally comes out. This game is incredibly punishing for no reason, not even for doing bad in combat, but for the smallest mistakes. One thing you're constantly told about is to not transform in public, which I think was a thing in the books, so it's accurate here, but they still give the option to do it. But if you do it, you are given an immediate game over, and are kicked back to the title screen. Hope you've been writing those passwords down. Then there's the combat itself. The animal transformations are one and done. If they fall in combat, they're gone. And if you want it back, you have to go fight another one. So it's sort of like a proto-Nuzlocke, sort of. Then you just come to some incredibly baffling design decisions. You cannot swap animal transformations in the middle of battle. Once you pick an animal to fight with, you are stuck with that animal until either you or the opponent dies. If you want to reserve health for an animal, too bad. Better pray to God the enemy dies before you do. Oh, and the only way to get health in this game is to either beat an alien which drops food, or find food laying on the ground that heals you, which is incredibly rare. This especially sucks when it comes to bosses, which will shred through your entire party if you don't have good enough animals to deal with them. This game is just very bleh. There's nothing to keep you invested. It's basically the same gameplay loop every mission, with an odd minigame to play here and there. This just feels like the devs were tasked to make an Animorphs game, decided to make a Pokemon clone without any of the engaging elements, and shoved this out the door. Speaking of doors, there are multiple times in the game where you are given a key and have to find where it goes. Then you walk through some random space and you've magically unlocked a door. The game is so fucking cheap, they couldn't even be bothered to make a door sprite. That should tell you everything. I guess if you were a kid in 2000 and were a fan of Animorphs, you could do a lot worse. But then again, you could also do a lot better. Honestly, I would have chucked the game out the car door if I played this when I was younger due to how frustrating it is. Game isn't very good, that's all I got. Let's move on. With the advent of Pokemon and seeing all those developers want a piece of that monster-catching pie, it's very interesting to see what weird-ass ways devs back then decided to base their monsters off of. The elements of nature, the monsters of Dragon Quest, the mobile phones of the 2000s. Keitai Denju Telefang, translated to Mobile Phone Beast Telefang, is exactly what you think it is. It's Pokemon, but the monsters come from mobile phones, or more specifically, the flip phones that were popular in the early 2000s. Talk about creating a period piece game. Oh god, you cannot get more early 2000s than this. Hey kids, remember when phones had actual buttons? So the game starts with you getting sucked into a tree and ending up in a world called the Denju world, inhabited by Denju. The Denju are basically the not Pokemon in this game, but unlike Pokemon, the Denju can speak full, clear sentences, and they talk a lot. One Denju basically sends you on a quest to become the best trainer in their world and fix everyone's problems. He partners you with a Denju and you set off. Now, how I thought this game was going to work was, you use your phone to capture Denju in, and then you use your phone to summon them in battle by typing in their number. But no, that's not how it works at all. Instead, throughout the game, you will fight Denju constantly, like going through grass, legit lifted straight from Pokemon. And then when fighting, they will randomly give you their phone number to call them if you need to summon them for battle. So yeah, you're not really a trainer. You're just getting phone numbers left and right, and before each battle, you call them and it's basically like, go get them, boys! You can have one monster up front and call two others, so you can have up to 3 Denju per battle. So that's something it did way before Pokemon did, 3-on-3 battles. But this game actually has a mechanic where the monsters you're calling need to show up first before being able to fight. And sometimes they'll actually call you and tell you they're running late. It's just so strange that these weird-ass creatures with fire, horns, and claws are just casually trotting it up on talking flip phones. How the hell are some of these things even capable of chatting? Look at this thing. Look at it. How the hell is it using a cell phone? It doesn't even have fucking hands! How fast it takes the Denju to get there is dependent on your cell phone signal. Yes, the signal of your phone is a game mechanic. If it's poor, then it takes longer for the Denju to get there, and vice versa. God, the fact that this is a mechanic is just so strange to me. Never did I expect a game where cell phone service would be a mechanic. Oh, and another mechanic is buying items for your Denju to give them more experience. You know, you can get them things like a Game Boy, a drill, a machine gun. Oh yeah, just give your Denju a fucking gun. He's packing heat! If you can get past the strange premise, this is actually a good time. I did enjoy myself in the few hours I played of it. The battle system is just a reskin Pokemon, and the moves you can learn are extremely limited, but it's a good time if you like Pokemon's combat. My biggest issue, though, is the game's elemental system. Yeah, it has the same system like in Pokemon, where one Pokemon type is weaker and stronger than others, but it does it in a way that doesn't make any sense. You know, in Pokemon, fire burns grass, water takes out fire, that kind of stuff. It's like it is in nature. But here, they're split up into biomes. You get Denju there from the desert, a mountaintop, or forest, that kind of thing. But why one would be weaker or stronger than the other doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Denju from the sky be weak to Denju from the mountaintop? It doesn't make any sense, and I honestly suggest running down the weaknesses before you start playing the game, because I kept forgetting most of the time. And my last criticism is the designs, mostly having to do with the biome argument. With Pokemon, you could usually tell what element the Pokemon was by just looking at it most of the time. I wonder what element this Pokemon is. I can't quite put my finger on it. And Telefang, I can hardly tell most of the damn time. What biome do you think this Denju belongs to? Which one? Just guess. You get it? Well, it's wrong because it's fucking water! Thank God they let you see it before you start the battle. So yeah, overall, this is a decent time. It's not gonna blow you away, but it is fine for what it is. It must have been a decent success in Japan because it got a sequel in the GBA, and from the looks of it, it seems to be an improvement in every way, but I played enough for this video, maybe some other time. The only reason why Telefang got any recognition outside Japan was because the two games were made into unofficial Pokemon bootlegs a long time ago. And they were called Pokemon Jade and Pokemon Diamond. And they were translated into very poor English.
Do you remember to pick up the baking soda?
From what I looked up, Smallsoft made basically nothing but Pokemon clones in their lifetime. One involving computer viruses, one involving dinosaurs. The only thing not trying to ape Pokemon was some weird episodic stuff on the PS1.
それにしても変な竹じゃのう。こんな竹は見たこともない。
Japan, why are you like this? Smallsoft was a short-lived company. They only lasted for like 3 years and only made Pokemon clones, but they were decently successful. I wonder why they closed down. Oh. Okay, so stay with me for a second. We've had Pokemon, but with actual animals. Pokemon, but with cell phones. Now, how about Pokemon, but Bistro Recipe was a Pokemon clone that, sadly again, was only released in Japan. And there's no translation patch for it. So it seems like my gameplay of this is going to be very limited. And it is exactly what I thought it was going to be. Pokemon, but with food creatures. I don't know what else it could be. Like I said, I can't get really far in this. And yes, I know Z-Translate exists, but it's a bit too cumbersome for me. At least right now, so we're not getting very far in this. Yeah, we didn't get this game, and it sucks because looking online, the monster designs are really cool and unique. The idea of a food-themed RPG is something that piques my interest, but it looks like this is just for the Land of the Rising Sun, until someone decides to translate it. So why am I bringing this up if we can't play it? Well, that would be because we may have not gotten the game, but you know what we did get? The anime!
These monsters once were edible, so everybody take a look at combat creatures you can cook. Fighting Foodons, that's our lead or in between. Fighting Foodons, this is really neat cuisine.
Yeah, someone at 4Kids thought the anime was prime material for America. After getting back after Pokemon put them on the map, I guess they thought just anything was fair game. So they decided to localize the Bistro Recipe anime and rename it to Fighting Foodons. Now, say what you will about 4Kids, but one cannot deny they knew how to make a damn theme song. I don't think anybody will ever deny that. That is what most people remember these dubs for. Now what about Fighting Foodons' theme song?
Carefully select your recipes.
Pizza will attack with gooey cheese.
Power up the fried rice with some peas. What will win, Italian or Chinese? If anything's left over, you can freeze. So if you're itching for a brawl, just start a kitchen free for all. And when your monster takes a fall, whip up a little matzo ball.
I mean, it's not bad, it's acceptable, but it's no yo-ho-ho, he took a bite of gum-gum! So, for reference, let's look at the plot of the first episode of Pokemon. What is it about? Ash is coming of age, getting his first Pokemon, the two of them butt heads until eventually working together to ward off a flock of birds after stealing some redhead's bike. Pretty simple stuff. It's great for a first episode. What is Fighting Foodons' first episode about? Two kids breaking into a slave camp to stop a satanic food ritual orchestrated by a furry. Come again?
My fellow gluttons, tonight, with this meal ticket and an ancient recipe for beef stew, we will attempt to create the most powerful Foodon in the entire glutton empire.
Let's just meet the host of this roast. Huh? Where'd she... What in the...
What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?
Good gravy.
Fellas, take care of him.
Listen, you crazy cat, do you have any idea what's at stake here?
The name is Claudia, and what's at stake is the most powerful...
Okay, so 4Kids, who were infamous for censoring the hell out of the shows they localized, of course, they didn't censor the furry's leotard. That was not a moan of pain. The ritual summons a giant dragon named Beefsteak.
Remember me!
Beefsteak. And the kid summons a rice dish to take him down.
Raisa! Fried raisa! All right.
It's just that... Did someone really think a concept like this would take off in the West? It's just too Japanese and too weird to appeal to anyone outside Japan, especially since there was no game to go along with it. Did it just brap on me?
How could I lose a giant side of beef to a fluffy bowl of fries?
Because you and that beefsteak have passed your expiration date.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch any more of this. I'm guessing most of the series is just bad food jokes. If you were a kid in the early 2000s, I guess this would have been alright to watch. But it ain't topping Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Anytime soon. I just don't know what got into 4Kids to dub a show like this that was based on a game that we never got and obviously never took off in Japan because there was never another one made after 1999! Yeah, this was a short-lived series, and this is the only whiff of it we got outside Japan, and hardly anyone remembers it. Guess that's why I just dig up old buried memories, like this relic from the early 2000s.
Kids, are you two all right?
Oh, yeah. It was a piece of steak, Dad. Get it?
No! I don't get it!
So now, we are no longer in clone territory. We are now entering flat-out plagiarism territory. What you're looking at is not a ROM hack of Pokemon Gold. This is not a fan game or made by an indie dev who was a big Pokemon fan. This is Robopon, a commercially released product made by a company called Red and published by Atlas or Hudson Soft, depending on which region you're in. Robopon is, well, it's Pokemon robots. That is the only way I can describe this game because that is exactly what it is. The battles are the same, the exploration is the same, the damn plot is the same. You have to go around the region and find the Legend 7 to become the champion. There are even 150 Robopon to collect, just like in the first Pokemon game. This is the closest you can get to Pokemon without it being Pokemon. Hell, the damn protagonists are the same!
If you haven't noticed it already, we'd like to point out that Robopon's player character is almost an exact copy of Red from Pokemon. In fact, only 22 pixels have been altered from Red's sprite to make Robopon's player, around a 10% difference overall.
This is the most carbon copy game that could have been made around that time. It's flat out shameless. Nintendo could have sued the company that made this and they would have won the court case, without a doubt. The only thing this game brings to the table is the ability to make modifications to your Robopon with different arms and weapons and shit. But other than that, it's just Pokemon! It's just Pokemon! There is nothing this game can give you that Pokemon can. But hey, I can't say you'll hate this if you like Pokemon, because it's just more Pokemon! It's not badly designed, it's not frustrating or annoying, it's just not original in the slightest. I am shocked this game made it to the market. Someone at Nintendo had to have looked at this for it to get approved for release. And really, did no one question just how blatant this is? What it's trying to obviously ape? Not only that, but it got 2 more versions for the Game Boy Color. Only in Japan though, the rest of the world never got the Star and Moon versions. Go figure. But that's not all. Not only did this game get 2 more versions, but it got a Nintendo 64 game. Yeah, turns out the N64 doesn't have only 5 RPGs, but 6, because this exists and it was only released in Japan. But not only that, it also got a sequel on the Game Boy Advance, and they were localized too! And these are at least trying to be different, at least graphically. I mean, damn, Nintendo let this plagiarist game series pass through this many times? They were only ever published on Nintendo consoles, and after these sequels, the series faded away, lost in the sands of time. Nothing more than a piece of history for a 24-year-old man to talk about years later to strangers on the internet. We really do live in a society. After all these years, Pokemon stands the test of time. All the copycats are lost in the past, but Pokemon keeps trucking along. The games could be the buggiest messes ever conceived, but they'll still sell because it's Pokemon. A series millions love and will continue to do so for years. Nowadays, there are still Pokemon clones being made, but they're usually indie games and they aren't even trying to be subtle about it. They are very obviously made with love for Pokemon in mind and not just for money. Remember kids, imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. Just keep that in mind. Remember to like the video and subscribe, my friends. God bless and good night.
Uh-oh, stinky. Uh-oh, stinky. Uh-oh, stinky.